Hi, I'm John Becker with Baldhead Realty here in Franklin, North Carolina, and today I want to take you through a brochure that's called Working with Real Estate Agents. In the state of North Carolina, it's required that any agent you work with goes over this brochure with you to ensure that you understand just exactly how you're going to be worked with one way or the other. Now, I'm going to have a live link in the description tab below the video so you can click on it and it will take you to the actual brochure and you can read it all for yourself. So I'm going to briefly go over it, but I would really appreciate it if you would go down to the link, click it, and read the whole thing for yourself so you have full understanding of what we're going to be discussing here. Working with real estate agents, it's interesting because there's a number of different relationships you can have when you're working with an agent. Number one, you could hire an agent to list your home, and as a listing agent, he comes out, takes pictures, does video, markets your home, helps you come up with a price, does some comparables, whatever has to happen in order to make you comfortable with getting your home listed. And then he puts it on the MLS. And if a buyer's agent comes and brings somebody that wants to make an offer, this agent would get up in the ring on your behalf. You're the employer, the agent is your employee, and then he negotiates on your behalf. You always have control until this offer gets agreed upon, and then it becomes a contract. And at that point, then that agent, that listing agent, would lead you through the closing processes until you get to closing and you get your check and it's done. Then if you came to town and you wanted to buy real estate, you could have representation here in the state of North Carolina too, and they call it buyer's agency. You can hire an agent to represent you, and as that agent represents you, he will show you or she will show you properties that they found, or they'll take you out and show you properties that you might have found on the MLS or on the internet, what have you. And if you want to put an offer together, that agent will help you figure out exactly how to put the offer together, what kind of price, by looking at different comparables and what have you, maybe the history of the listing, etc. And then, as a buyer's agent, he'll go and ring the doorbell of the listing agent, and then that dance ensues again, except the agent's on this side of the transaction. He's the buyer's agent. And so it's usually about price, and once it comes to agreement on price, then it becomes a contract, and then the buyer's agent will lead you through the closing processes, help you find a good home inspector, a pest inspector, or whatever kind of inspections you deem necessary to make you comfortable with that purchase. That's how that works, and then you go through the closing process and it's done. Now there's one more relationship that you need to understand about, and that is, it's called dual agency. And that normally happens when a buyer chooses a listing that the listing agent actually has listed in his firm, or it's personally listed by him. And it can be a conflict to some people because, hey, here's the agent and he has the listing and he's going to represent both parties. It's called dual agency. I don't have a problem with it because there's some safeguards, some ethical safeguards that go into it. Number one, in a dual agency situation, first of all, the seller has to sign an affidavit that gives him permission to work as a dual agent, and so does the buyer. The buyer has to sign an affidavit saying that he gives permission for the agent to work both sides of the deal. So everybody understands what's happening. It's out in the open. There's nothing hidden, nothing to be messed up there. So what happens in a dual agency situation to ensure that you're safe there is that the agent is not allowed to discuss price with either party, the buyer or the seller. So if the seller was to say, or the buyer was to say, John, what should we offer these people? I just told him, I said, this is a dual agency deal. I'm not allowed to counsel you on price, but you know what the man's asking or the lady's asking, just to offer him what you want. And then I'll take that, give it to the seller, and the seller might say to me, John, what do you think we should counter? And I tell him, sir, I can't tell you because it's a dual agency deal, and I wouldn't anyway because it's your money. Why do you want me, it's your money, so you decide. You make a decision, and then I take it back, and so it goes back and forth and until everybody's in agreement, and then it goes to contract. The other thing I can't do in a dual agency situation is I can't divulge any information about the buyer to the seller that would hinder that buyer's ability to negotiate the best deal for him. For example, I couldn't say, oh, Mr. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones came into your house. Mrs. Jones got all flushed, started squirting a few tears, said she saw this house in her dreams. It was an apparition. It was amazing. And when Mr. Jones got out of his car, his Cadillac Escalade in the parking lot, slammed his door, gold bullion was falling out on the ground. These people got more money than they got sense. They'll probably pay you more than you're asking. You see, I just kind of ruined those people's ability to negotiate a fair and good deal. On the other hand, ethically, I couldn't take information about the seller and give it to the buyer that would hinder the seller. So I couldn't say to the buyer, I couldn't say, Mr. Jones, Mr. and Mrs. Smith here, she beats him 3 times a day. She just got out of rehab. He's getting ready to file for divorce and they're going bankrupt. You could probably steal this house from him. As a dual agent, I'm not allowed to do any of that kind of stuff. And I don't need the law to tell me to do that because I'm not going to do that anyway. But it happens, so that's why we have this brochure and that's why it's being explained to you so that you understand how you can be comfortable in a relationship with a real estate agent here in North Carolina. Okay, one thing you have to understand at this point, until you actually hire the agent one way or the other, you're not being represented. So you can sit in a real estate office, talk to an agent, he can give you all sorts of information and everything, but if you haven't hired him and signed an agency agreement with him, you are standing there without representation and he's actually representing the seller. And they call it seller sub-agency. So you don't have to hire an agent, but if you don't, just remember that agent is representing the seller, whether it's his listing or not. And so if you don't want any information to be passed to that seller, don't say it in front of the agent. He can still help you and all that, but he's bound to give that information to the seller. So you need to make sure which agency relationship you want, and then you hire that agent. It's that simple. But until you actually really tell the agent that, again, I'm being real specific here, until you hire that agent, you're not being represented. So make sure you do the right thing. Now, as I told you at the beginning of the video, there's a live link in the description tab right below the video, and you click on it, it will take you to that brochure, and it will help you to understand it. You can read the whole thing there. But just remember, if you speak to a real estate agent about real estate here in the state of North Carolina, and they don't tell you about this brochure first before they do anything with you, beware. Matter of fact, get out of that office right away, because that's the law. They have to disclose that to you first of all, and if they don't do that, you don't need to be there. Again, I'm John Becker with Baldhead Realty. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or comments, just give me a call, 828-506-3719, and I'll be happy to help you. See you soon in the mountains of Franklin.